6:33 p.m. March 16, 2022, in the Wetlands Agency meeting. We first item on the agenda, I guess, would be the public hearing continuation. Litchfield Turnpike LLC, 10 and 14 Merritt Avenue, 14 lot subdivision application, construction of 375 feet of road and 14 duplex units. Since we're in a public hearing context, I don't know if anybody else is also on who wants to speak, but just as a reminder, we just need to be sure whoever speaks identifies themselves, especially since we're do have to do this remotely. And we have a quorum, so we're all set with that. I guess we might as well have the applicants start. Oh, hey, Chris, I guess what we should do first before we even start, there are a number of items that have been submitted prior to the hearing that should be part of the record. Chris has posted a list of those items on the website, and they should be treated as part of the record already. And we might as well get started. So, John Paul, are you taking the lead, or is John Nuff coming on, or what?
No, John Nuff is not here. For the record, I'm John Paul Garcia. I'm a licensed professional engineer and land surveyor, licensed to practice in the state of Connecticut, principal office 190 Fairwood Road, town of Bethany, and I'm representing Litchfield LLC, who's the developers of the property. With me tonight is Amy Sushin from Hurwitz, Sarrigan, Schlossberg, and Nuff. John Nuff could not be here tonight. He had a conflict. So Amy is filling in for John. I share my screen, Chris?
Yep. Hang on a sec.
Yes, we'll start that way. Okay, Mr. Chairman?
Sure, that'd be fine.
You should be able to share it now, John.
Okay, can anybody see that screen? It shows drawing C3.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. The property in question that we're developing is approximately 3.5 acres on the south side of Merritt Avenue, east of the West River, which runs right here. This is Litchfield Turnpike right here. And this is a gas station right here. This is a small brick building. Then here's the bridge. And then our property is, there's an existing house right here. And then there's 3.5 acres of undeveloped real estate. The proposal is to develop it into 14 units of housing. There's a wetland along the south side of the property adjacent, that's mostly on the Merritt Parkway. This line right here is the edge of the Merritt Parkway. And then Merritt Street is up here, of course. The regulated area on this parcel is this heavy line here. And one of the review comments that we had from Jim Preddy was to show the 100-year event line, which is this line in gray right here, according to the FEMA mapping that as opposed to the elevations. So the intent is to construct about 400 feet of new road and 14 units, the duplexes. They have parking in front. The intent is to have water and sewer. We've already have approval from the New Haven Regional Water Authority for a sewer tie-in. So that's been taken care of. And we have a tie-in to city water. The 400 feet of road and the new lots will create some additional drainage, which will be handled through a series of catch basins in the road. This is the low point. It pitches from here to here and then back up again. It'll catch into these catch basins, and it will tie into this detention pond here, and this will drain into the West River. The just for information, the bridge on West River has just been rebuilt in 2013. And that's basically it. It's a relatively simple. The lot is sloping gently from east to west, and there's not a lot of terrain to it. There's only about 4 or 5 feet across the entire parcel. Have made a couple of modifications. We submitted this to Jim Preddy of the town's reviewing engineer, and he sent back comments to us on the first set of review comments we got back were on February 8th. I'll go through them briefly. If you don't mind. The floodplain. Parcel is partially within the AE zone, which is this zone right here, and we had depicted it as elevation 81. The floodplain, according to the FEMA map, runs from approximately elevation 80.4, 80.5 down here to approximately 80.9 here. We had used elevation 81 being conservative, and he said, no, for all intents and purposes, go back and use the FEMA flood line. So that's what we did. He recommended a note added that any activity present or future which involves clearing, regrading, filling, construction be added to the plan within the 100-foot upland review area. Is prohibited without the prior consent of the town and the wetland agency. He had a question regarding the outlet structure here. Some of the inverts were backwards. He wanted to know who would own the detention basin. It's been discussed, but at present, it's the intent of the owner, Litchfield Associates LLC, to retain ownership of the detention basin. There's a report entitled Merritt Avenue Drainage Study, which was published by Cardinal Engineering in 2012. They note that the area has a high water table, and he had asked if any test pits have been dug. We have subsequently dug 3 test pits, 1 behind lot 12 and 2 down adjacent to the basin. Chris Sullivan was there for the digging, and it does establish the fact that there is a 5-foot water table. I'm sorry, excuse me. It does establish that there is indeed a 5-foot, 5.5 foot deep water table. The units that we're proposing have no basements, so that has no impact on us at all. It doesn't impact the construction of the units at all. He talks about a low-lying area south of 24, 26, and 28 Merritt Avenue, which is up here, being underwater at times, and that's this poorly drained wetland here, which is a result. The wetlands along the south side of the property are almost exclusively the result of poor DOT road drainage. There's a head wall here. There's a storm vault here that drains to the west. Almost exclusively, this stuff is all coming off the highway, and that's it's a poorly drained wetland, and it drains this way to the west. He talks about potential flooding problem, and how would the lots 13, 14 be affected from this flooding. They're nowhere near any area of high water table. In fact, they're about 50 or 60 feet away, and it drains from 13 towards this edge and then down. It doesn't drain from the south to the north.
Hey, John, not to interrupt you, but again, where are the neighbors located vis-a-vis the development that have been complaining about the flooding? Can you run through that again?
Pretty on Merritt Avenue, which is on the north side of the property. And I can go into there's a reason why these people all have flooding problems. They have basements. B, there's a high water table. And C, the soils are from an engineering standpoint, an absolutely beautiful medium coarse bank run gravel with a high porosity. Water. Chris was out here for the digging and test pits, and she can attest to that. The stuff is a gorgeous bank run gravel. It's accepted quality gravel.
Well, I guess my question is not to interrupt you, but if there's water, surface water, that's causing flooding, I'm not sure why having a basement is causing that.
Well, because the soils are being saturated. The water table, the static water tables are 4.5 feet. You have a 9 foot deep basement. You're 4.5 feet into the water table, and there's no place to drain it. You understand what I'm saying? In other words, they've got no way to drain the water out of their basements. They have to pump them. You can't put footing drains in here because it's flat. So their water table, the reason why most of these people have water issues is A, you have a tremendous amount of groundwater coming off the mountain, flowing from east to west. You have basements that are about 4 feet or 4.5 feet into the water table, and the soils that they're in is an extremely porous, extremely permeable bank run gravel. And four, you have no place to drain them. In other words, you can't put footing drains anywhere in here. So you have to depend upon a pump.
Okay, but well, how will having this amount of impervious surface over this entire area, which presumably it takes some of that water now, not aggravate the problem? I guess.
The water from the impervious surface is collected and sent to this detention pond, which is way below everybody here. So this construction here, nothing that's done here will make anybody's problem up here worse. Their problem is strictly the result of basements in porous gravel with a water table at 5 feet. And that's why these units do not have basements. All these units are constructed 1.5 feet above the base flood elevation, at elevation 83. They all drain to the west so that any impervious surface will be picked up by the road or by the drainage here and channeled to this detention pond right here, which is way below these houses.
But currently, doesn't water coming off the highway that goes into those wetlands along the property line go someplace else from there?
It channels south.
It's 7.
I'm sorry. I can't hear you. Okay.
Just trying to get in. Go ahead.
The majority of this water channels south and west. This is elevation 81. This is elevation 80. This is elevation 84, 85, 86. So it channels south and west. So nothing that comes off the highway now is going this way, is going north. It's all channeling south and west. There's a drainage valve here that channels through a pipe to this wetland corridor here and into the river. So all this, which has been recognized as poorly drained, is down around elevation 80, 81. You can see it on the contours. Let me just blow this up a little. Here's elevation 81, and this is up around elevation 84, 83. So you're 3.5 feet lower than here. So it's not going backwards, it's going to the south. It's not causing their problem. Their problem is caused almost exclusively by groundwater coming from the east up here, traveling through the pervious material. This wetland is not contributing to their flooding problem. That answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thanks. Mm-hmm.
Okay, where was I? Well, anyways, to get back to what we were talking about, all the impervious surface is captured and drained to this basin and has no impact at all. We're not going to make it better. There's absolutely nothing we can do short of putting in curtain drains here to shut the water supply off to these foundations. And that's not our problem. There's nothing that we're going to do will cause additional issues to these people. Absolutely nothing. Because everything we have is collected and put into this basin. And everything is south of them. It's lower. To get back to Jim's review comments. He had some general comments which may have been addressed by, we had a note referring to the town of Seymour. He recommended bonding and has the Greater New Haven Water Pollution Control Authority been notified? Yes. We actually metered the pipes to determine whether or not there was sufficient capacity in the sanitary sewer, and there is. We have a preliminary review from them, and has a traffic engineer reviewed sight lines exiting New Road onto Merritt Avenue. We're in the process of getting that study done. That's a P&C question. I made some changes to the drawing, which is the drawing you see in front of you, which is a drawing C3 with a revision date of 3/7. One of the changes we made was we met with the Conservation Commission, and they want a easement up along the river to Merritt Avenue from Pond Lily. We can only go as far as the property line, of course, which is noted here to be transferred to the town of Woodbridge for a trail easement. That's still being worked on because one of the things they wanted a wider easement. But when I explained to them that if you start to go wider, you start to get into the detention basin and the overflow area, and they didn't want that. So this is still in the discussion phase. But at some point, we're going to be transferring real estate from the association to the town of Woodbridge as open space for a trail easement along the West River. That was something that Tim Lawson and the Conservation Commission wanted. I then I sat down with Jim Preddy to go over his comments and to make sure we had everything resolved. And this drawing is basically the result of it. You should have a copy of my response of March 4th to Jim Preddy, in which we responded to his questions of February 8th. And in essence, we said we'd do basically everything he wanted. He asked in specific for an overflow area to make up the difference. We filled a little bit area here in the floodplain, about 430 yards of material to construct these houses. And so technically you're removing that area from the floodplain. So what we do is created an overflow area here, which is about 1.5 feet deep that ties into the sediment pond, detention pond. And that creates the overflow area. And then Jim sent us a review letter on the 14th. In short, we've addressed the compensatory storage area volume. We provided him with the calculations. We'll add a note about the wetlands, any work within 100 foot of the upland review area. The stormwater, his 3 comments regarding outlet structure details being fixed, pool on the detention basin, and a note be published certification to the town of Woodbridge by the design engineer prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy. The stormwater management measures were installed. Those have all been addressed positively. We conducted test pits, which he asked for in this area, which I explained previously. And he had 2 comments regarding the DOT drainage system and the plans for the bridge that was replaced on Merritt Avenue, which had some interesting features, which are not germane to this yet. That's basically it. It's a relatively straightforward application. There's very little that's occurring in an actual wetland. The entire site is, for all intents and purposes, the entire south and west portion of the site are in the upland review area. And we're not doing a lot of grading. It's just some minor, when you construct a house, you just do some blading around the house just to pitch the drainage away. And the drainage from the houses, the actual roof leaders and everything will be carried by pipe to the drainage system to the detention basin. So that will not cause any additional flooding. And we actually raised the house. There were a series of pictures that were sent out by one of the adjoiners that showed the flooding on Merritt Avenue in 2007 and 2012. And Mike Massimino, our client, took it upon himself to say, okay, rather than risk getting any of these houses flooded, we redesigned the houses so that all the basements are at elevation 83. It's a garage floor, and there's no living space below elevation 92, which is 10 feet above base flood. That's basically it. It's a relatively straightforward, relatively simple development.
John, when you were talking about the compensatory storage issue, and you talked about the filling, did that calculation include also the buildings that would be in the flood area at this point, or?
Oh yes, by all means, there is here. There's a way you do it, and what you do. This is the 100-year flood line per the FEMA mapping, the relevant FEMA mapping. So you have to compute all these little things here, and there's this. If here I can show you what it looks like. Hold the phone.
Yeah, I realize that's a zoning issue more than this, but it impacts what's being done.
Here's how we do it. Can you see my screen? There's a number of numbers here.
Likewise, yeah.
Okay, so you can see all these numbers. These are the calculations for the fill, and this is how you do it. Here's the elevation 81, which is base flood. This is elevation 80.9, 80.8, 80.7, 80.6, and 80.5, which covers the site. And this is the flood line. So anything that's between here and here is filled area. So you have to compute how much you have in fill. And so in various, we're not talking large amounts, we're talking 15.95 cubic yards, 26 cubic yards. The worst two are lots 6 and 7, which are about 80 and 57 cubic yards, because that is well into the road, and it contains area for the road. So when all is said and done, you total that out, and you come up with a total area and a total volume, and then just a simple math calculation to come up with an area. And that area is represented by this overflow area, which is nothing more than a depressed grassed area, which will compensate for the fill in these areas. It's about 1.5 feet deep.
So that'll be subject to the same maintenance obligations that the detention basin will be, correct?
It's mowing mainly. If anything, it's mowing. And that's why when I talked to the Conservation Commission, they wanted us to bring the trail easement up in here. And I said to Tim that I think we have to have a discussion about that, because if you bring it up into here, then you start to get into an ownership maintenance kind of operation. So we still have to hash that out. But yes, that's correct. This has to be, all intents and purposes, mowed. That's all that's required, because all it is, it's only operative in the upper ends of the 100-year storm event. In other words, this would probably never get water for a conventional 2, 5, or 10-year storm. You probably wouldn't see any water in here.
Okay, where are the property lines for those lots? I'm having trouble with the scale of this.
Line here. That's this line here. That's this line here.
So the overflow and the detention basin are actually parts of those lots?
Correct. That is correct. And that's why there's going to have to be an association set up to maintain it. And the owner has said he would do that.
Other questions from people?
No, I'm okay. I'm okay.
I don't know, my thought right now is this probably be a good time. Well, it'd probably be appropriate to have us go down there and see the place at this point, now that we sort of have a final plan as to what you're proposing. But if others have more particular questions right now, please speak up.
I'm good.
For the public to speak, they need to raise their hand. So on their computer down in the lower right-hand corner, there should be a little hand that they can click on to let me know that they want to speak. Typically, you allow 3 minutes for them to talk. But before that starts, do you want Jim Preety to talk to you at all? Because he is present for this hearing for you.
Yeah, let's first, if anyone else is in support of the application right now, otherwise we'll go to Jim to comment on his comments and John Paul's responses to that.
Okay, so we've got one person. I don't know if they're in support or not. Do you want to let them go ahead and speak? Do you want Kelly to speak? Okay, Kelly, you've been unmuted.
Thank you, Chris. Kelly Parker, I live at 35 Manila Avenue. I grew up on Merritt Avenue my entire life, and I'm greatly concerned that if I'm understanding the map correctly, a majority of the duplexes are being built in the flood zone. I know you're building them above 5 feet or with no basements. I'm still very concerned over that. I've been through all the floods when the bridges have washed out and we were going across the highway to the food store. So I'm very concerned over that. I'm concerned about the residents, how close all these houses are being built to the residents that have lived there their entire life. I'm just very concerned over this. I think there's too many duplexes. There's going to be 28 families. And I think it's just too much in this area. And I'm really concerned about the flooding, honestly. And I listening to what you say, and I'm obviously not an expert in any of zoning, inlands, any regard. I still think there's going to be a problem. I don't see how you're building 14 duplexes on this small piece of land and there's not going to be flooding issues to the people that live in this area. I just don't see it. And you're actually allowing, if this goes through, people, I mean, we've learned from past experience that building near a flood zone has flooded all these houses going all the way up Litchfield Turnpike. But now we're going to let a developer come and build, what, 7 properties right on the flood zone? I don't understand that. I thought we would learn from experience. And it's a quality of life issue for people on this street. They get flooded all the time. And now you're putting 14 duplexes. I just don't see how it can't flood. I'm just concerned over that, really. And I thank you for the time to listen to me. This is actually, I was a little confused. I didn't know it was going to be a hearing, public hearing, because I've been following it. I don't know if it was announced that there was going to be a public hearing, but I did contact several residents just recently that are on Merritt Avenue, and hopefully at least they're watching this so they could see, and I do have one question. I know I only have 3 minutes. Mr. Garcia said something about that gray line, something regarding FEMA, the line that goes from Merritt Avenue to the highway. Can someone explain that one more time?
You want me to explain it or?
Well, what is it regarding flooding? Am I understanding that correctly, or what exactly does that mean?
It's the line that defines where the
Thank you.
AE flood zone ends, basically.
Okay.
So it's a high flood area.
Right,
under the FEMA regulations.
right. So is it only me that sees that? What is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 that keeps moving. 7 houses are directly in the flood zone. I mean, I'm not trying to give anyone a, I just don't understand how this can be presented with all our flooding issues. And thank you for the time to even, and will there be another public hearing for this, or you're not sure yet?
I expect this will be continued till next month.
Okay, and that will be listed in the agendas, just so I can let the neighbors know. 'Cause honestly, I just went on it today and I saw it. I know it's been posted there since the 11th, but I just saw it today. That there was a public hearing.
I expect it'll be continued till our April meeting, which is the 27th, I believe.
Okay, I'll let people know. Thank you for your time.
Bob, you've got Frank DeLeo, excuse me, is on, so I'll unmute him. Frank, you've been unmuted. Frank, are you there?
But we can go back to Frank. Maybe we'll hear from Jim first, then.
Okay.
Hello. Hi, hopefully you can hear me. Hello?
Yeah,
We
can,
can
Jim.
hear you,
Go ahead.
Jim.
Okay.
Here, Jim.
All right. I can't. All right. Yeah, so I did have a number of comments that Mr. Garcia has addressed. You know, speaking to some of the comments that are kind of going back and forth, that flood zone line is what FEMA, with in all their studies and mapping, and that has evolved numerous times, uh, and changed a few times in the last 10 years. Um, that's the line that they say that the 100-year flood is, in this area, and it's based on what they call transects, but sections that they do through the river area in the floodway and the floodplain of that particular river. What Mr. Garcia had on there before was based solely on elevation, which you can argue may or may not be more accurate, but the fact of the matter is, unless you get go through the process to change their maps, you have to hold what they say is the line. So that's what's on here. What FEMA is calling the limit of the flood area. I had concerns based on one of your ordinances about filling in the floodplain. Anytime you're filling, you're supposed to, in the AE zone that's not coastal, you're supposed to provide compensatory storage area, basically an equal volume removed from the flood area so that it balances out. And that's what that overflow detention area is. And like you said, it may never see water, unless we get a 100-year event. So it can be mowed and maintained as lawn um, for the duration of its existence. I will comment that on those wetlands that are along the highway side there's a number of deficiencies in the storm drainage that, on the DOT side, that has been noted in multiple drainage studies, that it had been working properly and fixed, those wetland areas probably would be much smaller, and some of the flooding at that upper end, that you see on the surface probably would only happen in the most extreme events. I think that a lot of that wetland area has grown over the years because that the in some cases the drainage is blocked completely. And to my knowledge, the DOT's been made aware of this multiple times, and I don't think that they've ever done anything about it. Yeah, and I guess some of the other comments about the groundwater. These guys are staying out of the groundwater, so I don't think they're affecting it. If anything, digging that detention basin may alleviate some of it. And then, my other comments were either pretty standard for any development or just minor in nature. Those were the big items. I don't, this is the bottom of a very large watershed. So, and their stormwater report, mitigates the pre versus post condition. The detention handles it. They're not letting any more water go that leaves the site now. So even without that, being at such the low end of the watershed, I don't see this development would make really, even without the detention, noticeable impact on the West River. But following the rules, they are matching their pre and post calculations. So I was satisfied with that part of it, at least. And I think keeping it may seem like belt and suspenders, a little extra on their part, but I think that having the drive under buildings and having no finished level space on the lower level is just kind of good common sense for moving forward when we seem to be getting these crazier and crazier storms.
Jim, so John Paul's addressed all the comments you had and addressed them satisfactorily. Is that the case?
That's well, there was a couple that haven't been addressed, but they're really more germane to planning and zoning. It was traffic related and something more general. But as far as the wetlands and the flooding, yeah, I believe he has.
Just, you want to see if anyone else wants to speak, or first of all, I guess if anyone else has any questions of Jim before he goes. All right, Chris, do you want to check with anybody else who wants to speak?
I have Frank DeLeo showing up again, so I will try him again. Frank, you've been unmuted. Frank, are you there? I don't know. I'm showing he's unmuted, but I don't know if he's having technical difficulties on his end.
Is there anyone else other than Frank out there who wishes to speak?
Not seeing anybody else raise their hand, but I thought there might have been someone else who was going to speak, but not seeing it.
Well, we'll see if anyone else raises their hand while we continue a little bit. So, does anyone else have any other questions of John Paul or Jim before we figure out what to do next?
So again, if anybody wants to speak, in the lower right-hand corner of your computer screen, there should be a hand that you can raise that lets me know that you want to speak. And I currently still do have Frank DeLeo unmuted, so if he can figure out how to get his mic working, he can talk.
In the meantime, though, I don't know how everyone feels about a site visit. I think it would be helpful, but I'm open to suggestions from others.
Chris, it looks like somebody else keeps putting their hand up too.
That's Steve, who's on your commission or your agency.
But he's muted and the hand keeps going up. So.
Are we taking questions from the commission now, or what's
yes, definitely. Mm-hmm.
Huh?
Well, I have questions. And the real concern is certainly the three houses on the right side that are built into the review area and deep into the review area, as are some on the bottom and left side also. And the concern is that being in the review area, theoretically, that any person in one of those houses, amongst other things, really can't put a shovel into the ground without a wetlands permit. Um, and I don't know. As I recall, I don't recall the proposed. We see a proposed tree line in here, marked as typical. I don't know what that is. I don't know what the plans are for those. I don't know if those were detailed in the plan. And again, how that's all going to be managed. You've got a tree line. Looks like the tree line in at least one case is touching the edge of the house, which is probably not a good idea. But it just seems like a lot of construction in the review area, as well as we've got this big detention basin and this overflow area, and it that's going to require maintenance, and I don't know what kind of guarantee we have that that's going to be maintained, or just and maybe it doesn't have to be maintained. I don't know, other than mowing it, and there's just it just doesn't seem right to me. I'm not clear on how all the water from all of this impervious surface is going to get to the detention. I see one drain line. Is it just going to go flowing naturally, or are there other drains from around the houses to move that water? I don't know how you've got, although it's not a wetlands issue, you've got a house right up against it looks like right up against the property line. I don't know if there's any setback that needs to be done from that property line. I don't know how close it is to the houses that are on Merritt Avenue as they are now. Again, that's planning and zoning. It's not wetlands, but it just seems like it's pretty close to the property line back there. I don't know what kind of separation is going to be put in to demarc as best it could be done from the property back to the wetlands. I don't know if there's going to be a split rail fence put in, or how are these people going to understand what can be and cannot be done relative to the closeness to the wetlands. I see no provisions for any of that. I certainly would want to wait until we saw what the results of a traffic study was. I mean, all of a sudden you've got 28 families, probably 2 cars per family. Again, that's an awful lot of traffic moving in and out of here. I've been down at Merritt Avenue, and it's really not much of a road today. I presume the fire department and services have had their say in this, and it's all accessible and meets those standards.
Yeah, Jack, some of those are planning and zoning issues, but as far as the wetlands issues go, John Paul, do you want to address any of his comments?
Sure. Up until about 20 years ago, this site was used for a festival down by the church. And the trees that you see here, and you'll see it when you do a site walk, it's almost all overgrown in grass. There's nothing of any great significant feature. We just show the tree line, just to show a clearing limit line. Jack had a concern about the size of the lots. These lots all conform. This is a relatively unusual area because the lots are only 5,000 square feet. And as you guys know, we're used to dealing on 1.5 and 2 acre lots with 5,000 square foot houses. Here you're dealing with a 5,000 square foot lot. So while it does seem close, these lots are no different than 90% of the lots on Merritt Avenue. They're absolutely no different. That's the zone, 5,000 square feet.
John, that's a correction. It's 4,000 square feet.
Excuse me, 4,000 square feet. So while they look small, and they are small, there's only a 5-foot setback. All these lots are shown in correct conformance with the zoning regulation. As far as how we handle the runoff from the parcels, all the roof leaders are tied into the stormwater line, which is out in the street. There'll be a pipe that connects underground, and then from there, it goes into the detention basin. There should be no overland flow except the driveways into the street, and then from the street into the catch basins, and from the catch basin into detention. Everything is collected. The areas around the houses are grass. So when you do the sidewalk, you'll notice that this tree line is kind of artificial. It's more a brush line, if you want to put it that way. But there's nothing in here that's, 20, 25 years. And what is in here is very brash. It's like sassafras, overgrown sassafras. There's some willows, there's some birch. There's nothing of any great shakes in here. It's just brush. But up until 20 years ago, this site was essentially clean. This was used for a festival, and there was nothing in here. It was lawn. As far as the drainage study, as far as the traffic study, we'll take care of that at P&Z. And as far as working within the upland review area, this is the way the upland review area lays out. And again, it's a 4,000 square foot zone. It's very, very tight.
All right, Jack, did that answer some of your questions at least?
Well, it answers some of the questions. I'll reserve my final thoughts after the site visit and the additional work that's going to be done with the Conservation Commission.
Anybody else have any questions or comments to make?
Yeah, one other comment. The wetlands that are there now, do they have, or is there water in there, or is it marshy, or is it what's
no. The last time I was up here, most of the stuff was dry. There was some water in this one here, right about where my hand is, and there was a little stuff here. But part of the reason is because there's a head wall that's 3/4 filled with sand. Nothing's working, as Jim said before. This entire drainage system, and they have a series of manholes. There's a manhole here. There's a manhole here. There's a manhole down here. There's a head wall here. There's none of this has ever been maintained, probably since the parkway was built. And so it's just full of sand, full of road sand, and it's just overland flow whenever you get it.
A question for Chris. I know that there's plans to redo the whole exit 59. Is any of this included in that plan? Do you know?
I would have to look at the plan and let you know. But that plan, the plans that we've seen have not had any approvals attached to them. They're conceptual. But I will check and let you know before the next hearing continuation.
Okay. And the other question would be, of course, is there any way to get DOT to come and maintain it as it should have been, or are they just? And maybe the answer to that is what's in the plan for 59. So I guess we'll wait and see what you find.
DOT's property, so we have no way of forcing them to come do anything.
Yeah.
This is on.
Bob, you've got hands raised by two agency members, Steve and Jean. Do you want to hear from them?
Sure. Yeah, Jean, you want to go first?
I'm curious whether the use of permeable driveway surfaces would mitigate any of the potential problems of flooding, as opposed to this concrete or asphalt that's generally used.
Can I answer that now, or should I wait?
You can answer it now. That's fine.
Okay, permeable driveways are a great solution if there's an issue, but there's no issue here because we have the driveways draining into the road draining into the catch basin, so it doesn't get you anything per se.
Well, less stress on the detention basin.
What's that?
maybe a little less stress on the detention basin.
You're talking, if I can put this in perspective, we're talking development of probably about an acre of impervious in a 10,000 acre watershed. In theory, if we were doing this the way I would like to do this, we probably wouldn't have detention at all. For years, the working hypothesis for detention design is in the lower third of a watershed. You should not be holding water, because what happens is you hold water and you're releasing it when the entire shed starts to drain. The middle third, you talk about detention, and then the upper third, you detain all the time. This is in the lower third of the watershed. Our outlets are controlled by the bridge of Pond Lily, is the choke point. That's down here someplace. The bridge crosses Pond Lily. That bridge at Pond Lily has an elevation of 77, which is the choke point. One of the reasons you get so much flooding up in here. Until they fix that, not a lot going to be done. So you're talking about eliminating 1,000 square feet of detention pond, 500 square feet of detention pond, a foot deep to make up the driveway. And that's not the kind of benefit. Plus, you're also adding water back into the groundwater. It's in this particular case, we looked at it and we discarded it as not helping the situation at all.
Okay, thank you.
But just to put it in perspective, this watershed, what drains to here is about 16 square miles. That's what drains to this point right here.
Thank you.
Michael?
Did I see David's hand up? I would like to say something.
Yes, sure. Go ahead.
Is that me, Bob?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. Steven Sosensky. Jean Paul, take out your pen and paper. I spent some time looking at the plans and the wetland report and our regulations, and I have serious concerns about the application and the wetland report. And I guess I'll just get right into my, checklist of items or something like that. And I thought it'd be pertinent to raise these now before we go any further, certainly before our site inspection. I'll begin now. So I visited the site 2 times already. I visited the site first on January 16. I visited the site again on March. What's my notes on that? Just last Saturday or so. What would that be? March 10 or 11, or this past Sunday, March 14 or so. And I've sent pictures of that site visit from last week to the commission. And if we'd like, we could share, Chris could share a screen, but let me make my points and then we can double back with pictures. So a couple of things I noticed is I wonder if first of all, I'm completely unsatisfied with the William Kenny Associates soil science report. I believe it falls short in a number of important respects. I believe that it may have overlooked the existence of a vernal pool within the easternmost wetland area. And I wish I could be more specific about where in that wetland area I'm talking about, but I couldn't locate all of the wetland flags, even though at our last hearing, I asked that they be reviewed and make sure that they're intact. So I could not find flags, and then flags I could find, and there's pictures of this, they've been wind whipped and broken away. So I could not identify where on the property or in that wetland area I was standing based upon the flag, because the flag was in tatters or otherwise destroyed. So I'm talking to you now about a vernal pool that I believe exists, and we could triangulate where that is between wetland flags 60, 65, 73, and 52. So if you took those 4 coordinates, we'll call them, generally in that area there where you have your cursor, I identified much standing water. And I'm a little concerned to hear you say that you were out there recently and it was dry, because uh, you know, there's just plenty of water there. And I saw other indicia of that area being a vernal pool. Now that's important because vernal pools can require up to a 750-foot setback or buffer zone based upon the territory of the obligate species. So, and that made me a little upset when I was out there to see all of the earth disturbance on that entire parcel to build the few houses that are there. Because all that disturbance could have a deleterious effect on the wetland and the potential vernal pool out there. So a lot of that property has already been cleared for the small development that is already ongoing out there, including the stockpile being located right up against or being located inside the upland review area. So I was a little surprised to see a stockpile before an approval in the upland review area. We haven't even decided the matter yet. There's already activities, unlawful activities, perhaps, on this property. And I could tell that there might be a vernal pool there too, not just from my visual observations. And you'll see pictures of a large area of standing water, and perhaps my camera caught some of the other indicia of it being a vernal pool, but I could tell it might be a vernal pool because of the type of soil there. So there's aqueous soil, which are some of the worst poorly drained soils in that area that I identified, if I was correct in where I was on the property, also happens to be in one of the lowest spots of the property at 81 feet in elevation or lower. So that water is impounded there seasonally, and it being impounded there in the winter is also a high indicator that we are dealing with a vernal pool there. So that brings me back to the shortcomings of the wetland report. This is one of the weakest I was chairman of a commission for almost 10 years in a neighboring town. I practiced land use law. This is one of the weakest soil scientist delineation reports I've ever seen. So even though our regulations require that there be some assessment of the impacts of the development on the wetlands, including an assessment of their values and functions, all according to section 7.6D and E of our regulations, I see no mention at all of the wetland functions and wetland values there. So what is the suggestion that these wetlands have no value and no function? So it's typical for a soil scientist or a biologist or someone to, and I believe our regulations require that there be some analysis of the impact of the development on these regulated areas. And this report is devoid of none of that. I even think I saw, and there's a picture of it too, I think I saw a flag right proximate to the vernal pool, which has the marking of the soil scientist William Kenny on it. I believe the flag, which is old now, some years old, it still shows their name. It was a yellow flag, and I wonder if that was there to show that there was a vernal pool. So I'm not quite sure why the scientist went to the extent to place a post with a marking on it at the edge of the vernal pool, but then not identify that there's some feature there. So I don't know quite what that yellow flag is, let's say, that appears to identify the location of a vernal pool. I'm not quite sure. Especially with a hearing on an application that is so interesting to the town, I might have expected that the soil scientist confer with the natural diversity database of our Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection to find out if there are any threatened, protected, endangered species in those wetland areas. Reviewing my regs. And I guess with respect to this and my point about what I consider to be a wholly deficient wetland analysis is I wonder if we should require, if we should treat this application under section 19.5 of our regulations as requiring a complex application fee that might be collected from the applicant for our use in retaining a soil scientist or a hydrologist or a wetland biologist, have some people in mind, to perform an analysis of the regulated area for the commission's benefit. Given the unwillingness of the applicant to do a fuller analysis of the impact of the development on the regulated area, to perhaps fully identify the resources in that regulated area. So I want to make that point, that I wonder if we should be hiring our own scientists to assess what's going on out there. I believe it probably is not debatable that there could be some impact on the wetlands because of the diversion of the water flows that would otherwise go over land are now going to be diverted and shot straight into a detention basin. So I believe that we can anticipate that there may be, at least at this early stage in the proceeding, a negative physical impact to the regulated area, such that an analysis that I'm talking about is even more warranted. Yes, I guess I'll save what I was going to mention about the peculiarity and the need to protect vernal pools until we identify whether or not we have one out there. But I think that's a big issue, especially when we have so much of the property development situated in what is considered to be, what's the here? Let's see. In the critical terrestrial habitat of the obligate species of that vernal pool. So, I think I wonder if we have a vernal pool. I wonder if there's some suggestion that the plan might need to change as a result of the need to protect that special area. So, another thing too I noticed about the application as I looked at it in the light of our regulations is I wonder if the application is complete as it exists before us now. I don't see any regulation section 7.5F explanation of any alternate development that might result in less or no environmental impacts to the wetlands. And I wonder why there hasn't been any alternative plan to propose to us that would result in less impacts to the regulated areas. As a matter of fact, I believe that our regulations require that we be shown or that prudent feasible alternatives need to be shown and depicted and explained why they have not been chosen. So not only do I believe that our application regulations, specifically under 7.5F, but our significant impact regulations under under 7.6, where we have declared that this is a public hearing, I believe that might automatically implicate the applicants need to produce prudent and feasible alternatives, which there are none from what I can see from the application material. So I wonder if the application is incomplete insofar as I said, we haven't been shown any prudent and feasible alternatives under the two theories under our regulations that I believe we deserve those. And just thinking out loud, not to get ahead of myself, but I wonder if a reasonably prudent and feasible alternative might result in the reduction of lots, specifically lots 8, 9, 14, and 13. Might be one way to depict a prudent, feasible alternative. So, and if we are dealing with a vernal pool out there, it is, interesting and not just academic to think that that detention basin could act as a decoy vernal pool to obligate species, which could cause them to breed in the detention basin, which would which almost certainly could result in the loss of that breeding. Because of the flush associated with detention basins and such. So, as I said, the obligate species might be inclined to move their life cycles into the detention basin, which would be an anathema, of course, and that could affect the physical characteristics of the vernal pool in the wetland area, which could be grounds for requiring a change of the plan or even a denial of the plan. So those are a couple of my thoughts as I looked at the plan, and I realized there may be a failure to account for a vernal pool. And then, of course, that I believe that we're being deprived of the regulatory requirement now that we be provided with a prudent, feasible alternative to the current proposal. So that's about what I'd like to say now at this stage of the proceeding. Thank you, Bob.
Thanks. Yeah, before I let John Paul respond, I mean, typically feasible, prudent alternatives, we've gotten into those when there's actually been activity in the wetlands area. But we can look at the regs and see what the situation is there and what's required. Probably something dealing with the vernal pool issue probably would be helpful, but I'll let John Paul respond to your comments.
Amy, I think may want to respond.
Right. For the record, Amy Suchins, attorney representing the applicant. Just wanted to address a couple things. Number one, the public hearing is being held because there was anticipated public interest, not because there was a determination that there was a potential significant impact. The fact that you're having a public hearing because of public interest, not because there is a potential significant impact, does not require the provision of feasible and prudent alternatives. That comes up specifically when you have a public hearing because of the potential significant impact. I also wanted to address Mr. Kenny's report. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, but he is actually a very well respected wetland soil scientist that I've worked with on several projects, both large and small. He had a conflict with another meeting this evening, but certainly if we're going to be continuing, we will have him available at the next meeting. I know that he's been out to the site, and if there are specific questions about, and I will alert him to the fact that there's a question about whether there is a potential vernal pool or any evidence that he had seen of that. And I would like to see, the photographs that were taken by Mr. Sisensky's site visit, so we can, number one, look at those and understand what the potential claim is about a pool, and more importantly, so I can turn those over to Mr. Kenny so he's available and can look at those to see, what issues, may be seen.
Thank you. Are you done?
I am.
Okay. I just would like to direct your attention to regulation 7.5F of our regulations, and it indicates that all applications shall include the following information in writing or on maps or drawings. Zoom down to sub F. Alternative, which would cause less or no environmental impact to wetlands or watercourses, and why the alternative as set forth in the application was chosen. All such alternatives shall be diagrammed on a site plan or drawing. So I understand your legal argument. I'm not prepared to agree to it because I need to take a look at the record and confer with staff about whether, the reason that we are at a public hearing. But to bootstrap the point of prudent and feasible alternatives, I would ask you to take a look at 7.5F. And you must conclude that we deserve prudent and feasible alternatives based upon 7.5F.
I do recognize that 7.5F references a reference to alternatives, but I think what you're asking for is with respect to 7.6E, which becomes a term of art with respect to feasible and prudent alternatives. We might show you alternatives, but the request about feasible and prudent alternatives, frankly, comes up in the context of a significant impact, and that's not why we're here tonight. So again, we can agree about what the legal issues are. I understand what your regulation says with respect to 7.5F, and we will look at that. But I do think that the representation that we needed to show feasible and prudent alternatives to you tonight, because there was a potential significant impact, that is not why we're in a public hearing.
I'd like to thank you. I'd like to confirm that, and I do believe that that we could declare that is so at any point in the process, which would then implicate the need to produce prudent and feasible alternatives. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have comments or questions? Chris, have you been able to reach Frank DeLeo or?
Hey,
Did not mute myself. Sorry about that. I don't know. He's not showing up with his hand raised, but let me try to.
Hey, Bob, while Chris is pursuing that.
No, I'm trying to get him up, so just hang in a sec.
Okay.
I'm not showing that he has a microphone, so sorry about that. And Jack also has a comment that he would like to make, just to let you know.
I'd just like to finish by to reiterate my request that we do declare that this application requires a complex application fee, and that we retain a scientist of our choosing to perform an analysis of the regulated areas and the potential, and then analyze for us the potential impacts of the development on the regulated areas. I didn't want that to be lost in my remarks earlier.
Well, our typical process includes the applicant typically paying for additional experts if the board if the agency requires it. I mean, do you want to wait for Kenny to come back with his comments on that first, and then if you still think we need an expert beyond that, we can go and get somebody to review that situation?
That's a smart suggestion, Bob. I guess under ordinary circumstances, I wouldn't object. I'm not even objecting now, but the fact that we have statutory deadlines that compel us to act on these applications, within certain timeframes, I guess I'm just wondering if that process, and I know the applicant can grant one or more extensions, or maybe one extension, but I wonder if the process allows for it. So maybe we should. I guess I'm not calling for action on that tonight if we're not prepared to, but I think that's an important possibility, I guess, with respect to our analysis of this proposal.
Well, but what does everyone else think? My feeling is that we're probably better off waiting for the applicant's soil scientist to get back to us with his view of the situation, then we can proceed. I'm sure the applicant's willing to give us an extension. We're going to need it to get to April anyway. But I'm open to any other suggestions if people feel that we should retain somebody now.
Let me just before the commissioner's comment, let me just say that we don't have anything from anyone with any expert qualifications that talks to us. Mr. Criscolo's analysis falls short because he's limited to being an engineer only. Is we don't have any analysis of what the proposed development, what the negative effects would be. I mean, I as a layperson and a commissioner have some, but if we're going to make a record in this proceeding, and we're going to come to the most recent decision on it, I think we need somebody that's not the applicant's representative to tell us what the impacts are likely to be from this development on the regulated area.
This is Amy Suchins. I would suggest, Mr. Chairman, our request would be, number one, obviously we'd give you the extension to get to April. And I do think that if your suggestion is correct, that if we have Mr. Kenny available at the next meeting, he's able to look at the information that hasn't been provided to us by way of these photos. I'd note for the record that it was awfully wet on Saturday. So if there were observations made on Sunday, whether something that was, 12 or 24 hours even after an event might be a different experience than if we hadn't had rain in a week. So I do think that it would be most appropriate for you to hear from Mr. Kenny before making any determination about whether a peer review is necessary or whether there needs to be a finding that this is a significant impact. I think it's important for you to hear from him because he may be able to address a number of these questions for you. And frankly, tonight's the first time we're hearing them.
First night of the public hearing.
Well, there is one way. There is one way that we may be able to proceed. I mean, because of some scheduling issues, we actually have another meeting next week. That was a regular meeting. So I don't know if you think it's possible for Mr. Kenny to take a look at things between now and next Wednesday, and then we can put off deciding to retain anybody else. I don't know if that's enough time for him. We could put off deciding to retain anyone else until next week. I'm not sure how you feel about that, but
yeah, I mean, we can certainly reach out to Mr. Kenny in the morning and find out how quickly he's able to get out there and review the materials and photos, and then we can continue the meeting to next week as a sort of procedural item, and then if he's not available, obviously continue from next week until your April meeting. But that way, when we finish tonight, it's clear on the record that we're going to continue to next week. If we're able to provide any other information before then, we can do so. I can let Ms. Sullivan know, and we'll sort of make that determination about whether we can provide anything substantive at next week's meeting accordingly.
Is that an okay solution for tonight's purposes?
Yes, thank you.
Good idea.
And just so that the applicant's engineer and counsel know, I have forwarded to both Attorney Nuff's email, because I'm sorry, Amy, I didn't have yours handy.
That's okay.
John Paul, the pictures that were described this evening.
Great,
so if you don't receive them, let me know, but I did send them.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, just moving on for now. Does anyone else have any other questions? Anybody in the public still trying to call in or get in? Chris, if you just want to let us know if there's anybody else raising.
Jack has his hand raised. Does Jack want to talk again?
Actually, no. I had some system problems. I had to reboot the system, and I found out that you had muted all of us. So I'm fine, thank you.
Okay.
But I do agree with many of the comments that Stephen made, and I think we best wait till hear what would be available next week, and then determine whether or not we need a soil scientist, and maybe even perhaps before the site visit.
So I just want to note for the record that Frank DeLeo is still showing here with a hand raised, but I'm not showing a microphone. Unfortunately, with what we're limited to via WebEx, I can't bring him in to talk. But with the hearing being continued, there will be additional time for members of the public to speak. And if they would like to submit any written comment, they are welcome to do so either via my email or in person or snail mail. And we'll make sure that it's distributed to all of the agency members and to the applicant's team.
All right, does anyone else have anything we want to deal with this evening? And we'll just continue, and if not, we'll just continue the hearing till next Wednesday.
I'm in agreement with that.
One question, Mr. Chairman. Are you guys going to do a site walk between now and next Wednesday?
Yeah, we probably should talk about that in the context of the public hearing, as far as scheduling. What's everyone's preference? To be honest with you, from my schedule, and I could go separately, but early evenings are now better than weekends. So.
Good.
I can do early evenings, most evenings.
I've given enough notice, I can probably do it, but I'd certainly like to have the wetlands flags back in there.
Well, I was going to ask that as my follow-up question. What would you like flagged?
I'd just like to have the flags put back, whatever Stephen noticed was not readable. I'm also concerned about the issue relative to a potential vernal pool, which we don't know the specifics on.
He's talking about this set of flags up behind lot 9 to the end of the property. I just put that row of flags from 56 through 69. I'll put that row of flags on. There's no reason to put the uphill row on. I'll just put that row of flags on. Or do you want like these here and these here? I mean, I could do whatever the commission decides.
Well, I mean, if Bob, if you don't mind, maybe I can answer that. So yeah, John Paul, I mean, certainly the northern perimeter of the eastern wetland, what we just discussed, that wetland flag 56 all the way to 69.
Yep.
And if there's, if there is additional time, maybe the rest of the flags that are just that have been destroyed over the last 5-6 years, and maybe any other flags that might be pertinent to the discovery of a vernal pool. Let's say,
I'll say the problem I have is like doing this stuff is technically on somebody else's property. So I have to be and it's on the state of Connecticut. But what we can do is I'll stake the stuff that's closest to the development.
The northern perimeter, okay.
Starting from here all the way up to here.
Fine. And some of the flags,
sorry, guys. What do people think about having the site walk before the meeting next Wednesday? That way it gives Mr. Kenny and John Paul the maximum amount of time, and it gives us a little perspective before next Wednesday's meeting.
I think that's a good idea.
I hope to have the flag staked tomorrow.
Well, and just for everyone's benefit, since we're in a public hearing context, we can't have discussion while we're at the site visit, but we can look.
So yeah, I'm available Monday, Tuesday evening.
Okay. I was thinking maybe 6 o'clock Wednesday before the meeting next week.
Ah.
And if people can't make it, feel free to, go down there the day before or whatever. So, and then we'll continue the public hearing to formally start at 7:30 on next Wednesday. Unfortunately, we'll probably still have to be virtual, so we'll have to do it this way again.
So Bob, did we just schedule that public hearing for March 23, Wednesday at 6 p.m.?
No,
No,
the
no.
site visit is for 6 p.m.
That's what I meant.
Yeah,
And then the
site visit
hearing
at
is at
6
7:30.
and the regular meeting at 7:30, like Chris just said, yeah.
Okay.
All right, anything else that anybody has to say before we move on? Okay, do we have a motion to continue the formal public hearing to next Wednesday, the 23rd at 7:30 p.m.?
So moved.
Steven? Okay, second.
I'll second it.
Jack, second. All in
Jack.
favor? Aye. Opposed, abstentions. All right,
Was-
so we'll
what-
continue the. I'm
Was
sorry, guys.
Stephen seated for a regular
Yes.
It's a
member?
full member.
Oh, okay. Great.
So anyway, so we'll continue the public hearing till next week, and we'll see what we can do. Amy, if for some reason, Mr. Kenny can't get it done, just let us know, and we'll just continue it. We'll open it and continue it until the April meeting when everybody can be here again. So I don't want to have to drag.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't want to have to drag all the professionals out and plus more money for just to come in and say hello. So
Right. I'll work through Ms. Sullivan.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
everyone. Okay, we have our regular meeting, so everybody's still hanging around. So who wants to hang around? All right, moving right along. New business. Greater New Haven Water Pollution Control Authority, 66 Ansonia Road, renovation of Woodbridge Pump Station. Do we have anyone here for that tonight?
You have Attorney Marjorie Shansky, and you have two representatives from the Greater New Haven Water Pollution Control Authority also on board. So they're here. Where'd Marjorie go?
Thank you.
Marjorie, I unmuted you. Do you want to go first or?
Yes, thank you, Chris. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the agency. I'm Attorney Marjorie Shansky, and I do represent the Greater New Haven Water Pollution Control Authority. And I apologize, I've just flown in from another meeting. I know that I'm here this evening with Tom Scroy, who is a professional engineer and the Director of Engineering at the WPCA, and I'm sorry, I'm not exactly sure with whom Tom has come, but this is indeed the rehabilitation of the Woodbridge Pump Station that's located on Ansonia Road at the corner of Brookside Drive. And I think that it would be best if Mr. Scroy took over and explained what the WPCA is doing.
Mr. Scroy, would you like me to have you share screen?
If you'd like, let me just talk for a little bit, then I can share some screens after if we need to. How's that?
Okay.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
And as far as two representatives, I'm not quite sure who's on. Bruce Kirkland's also an engineer that works for me. He could be on, but I don't see his name. But that's fine if he's on. This is the only pump station that the Greater New Haven Water Pollution Control Authority owns in the town of Woodbridge. Since we regionalized in 2005, Woodbridge is our newest part of the system. We don't do a lot of work in Woodbridge. And with our pump station upgrades, we've cycled through them and we've come to Woodbridge finally in year 15 after regionalization. So it's really, excuse me, it's really a small station. It's a duplex pump station. It handles about 30 houses. And it's located on Ansonia Road. And interestingly enough, it's really not, the address is for where the pump station sits is on 2 Brookside Drive. It actually sits on a permanent easement from the Sabelico family. That easement was obtained by the town of Woodbridge in 1971 or thereabouts when the pump station was put in. And we intend to maintain that same easement and do all work within that same easement. The station is a what we refer to as a can station. It has a wet well, distinctive wet well where the water is, and then there's a distinctive dry section where the pumps sit. And right now, our men have, in order to service the pumps, have to go down into this can, if you will. It's very narrow, confined, and work on the pumps or pull them out, take them to the top. It's a practice we don't like to do. It requires confined space, special training. We're trying to phase these out, and that's what we intend to do here. So we're going to turn this station into a submersible pump station where the guys can safely work on the top. There'll be a hatch. They can pull the pumps up on slide rails. There's going to be two 30 horsepower pumps. There's a generator on site now, and we're going to be replacing that generator with a new generator. Generator has double containment, leak detection. The pump station, state of the art. It's connected to our SCADA system, as all our pump stations are. So if we have any high wet well readings, it immediately sends a signal to our plant, which is manned 24/7, and they dispatch a crew to see what the problem is. So, all new stuff. Aesthetically, let me just see if I can share a screen and pull something up here so you can see what it looks like now. I got so many things open on my computer here. I'm trying to figure out where I am. I'm going to attempt to share screen. Are you able to see this?
We
A lot of
see,
content, but we can see it.
You see something called
See
WebEx?
oh yeah, it's not pulling up the right thing then. One more time. Yeah, it's not so. Let me see if I can drag it over.
Ah, that's a picture.
Right.
Is that a little better?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it looks like when Google Earth took, this is just the Google Streets View image, the sun was kind of setting over there. So as you can see, the station is not that attractive, really. You got some plantings that were put in probably years ago. You have this kind of ugly setup here with the panel. So what'll happen in the future will be this pole will come down and all this equipment will disappear. This will be enclosed in a larger cabinet that'll be housed over in this location. You can see the Kohler generator that generator will be replaced. There'll be a new concrete pad placed here so all the guys can work on nice clean area and we can maintain it nicely. We're going to put a 6 or 8 foot a steel fence that actually looks very attractive. It won't be a chain link fence like this, so it'll be a residential, like high end metal fence. So it should improve the aesthetics. We have planting shown on the on the Smittle I sent to you. What we intend to do with that is we have arborvitae protecting the area. We'll have an allowance in the contract. So we'll work with Mr. Sabalico. We're good neighbors and we want to try to make sure he's happy and that the town is happy and we can add or subtract plantings based on the need. That's really a minor thing in the grand scheme of building the pump station. So that'll handled at the end. Obviously, there'll be disturbance during construction. We'll have our standard sed fence and sed erosion and controls. If I go to the, let me see if I can pull over the plans for you. Whoops. I got a NASA setup here with 2 screens and my laptop, and without a mouse, I'm kind of handicapped. So here you have the new pump station layout. As you can see, here's the wet well. So this is where the guys will service the pumps. This is the incoming manhole right here. And,
we
It's a gray screen.
we just have a gray screen.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Let me unshare and then reshare and see if it pops up because should look fine.
Yeah.
Did that work?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see if we can. Okay, so you got your influent sewer coming into the manhole here where my hand is. This is the new wet well where the pumps are located. This is your generator and your and we actually have to put our valve pits so that we can service the valves. We have a bypass valve system that in case the station goes down, we can actually stick pumps in there and bypass around the station and work on the station. So that's an extra belt and suspenders if we ever have to take the station offline. As you can see, we proposed some abreviati. I talked about that before. There's very little grading. Obviously, there'll be disturbance just like any construction. The entire gray area will be concrete. So that the guys will be able to work on all this stuff. At one time we had asphalt proposed, but it's difficult to compact between equipment and all that stuff we got going on there. So we thought the concrete pad would be good, and we'll be able to maintain that. There'll be a fence surrounding the existing area. The existing conditions are underneath this, so you can see that the footprint really isn't changed that much. I think overall it's an aesthetic improvement. As far as the wetland setback goes, the wetland setback, the reason I'm taking this to you is 100 feet. We ended up taking it 100 feet from the closest wetland. That's why it's a straight line. It doesn't follow like you normally see a wetland, but it's 100 feet from the closest portion of the wetland. We're right up against the CLMP right away, or UI right, actually CLMP, I guess, or UI. CLMP. I can't remember. These power companies keep changing their names. So, I'm trying to think of anything else I've forgotten to tell you. But I think that's about it. Pretty straightforward. Like I said, this is something that, it's in our schedule of projects we keep working through, replacing all the pump stations. This is 1971. I think the generator was added just about at regionalization. I think the town of Woodbridge did it as part of the agreement. I think it was maybe 2004, just before we regionalized. And we've been running it ever since. So I'll be happy to take any questions.
So is the only impact within the 100-foot upland review area where the sewer goes out, or what? I'm trying to look at the map and try to get a sense for that. So.
My German Shepherd's barking in the background, so I apologize.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I believe that is the case, that it's beyond the 100-foot setback.
Yeah, it looks like most of the activity is beyond the 100-foot review area. So
I'm trying to pull the map back up. That's what's happening. I'm having a hard time here.
What is it we have to approve?
Here we go. I got it up and it's not letting me screen share. All right, here we go. I got it. This is your 100-foot setback. There's nothing actually in the wetlands or anything. So we're just everything's within that setback area. And that's why we're bringing it to you.
So, Mr. Chairman, if you're comfortable,
Yes, I think we
have
are.
this deferred to me as your enforcement officer.
Absolutely.
I see no issue with doing that. I think that'll be one way to expedite this, so.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any comments or problems with that?
No,
Makes
not at all.
really good sense.
Yep.
Want to take a formal motion to do that?
A motion to delegate this matter to Chris to handle administratively.
I'll make a motion to delegate to Chris administratively. Yeah.
Yeah.
Second that, Dave? Yeah.
Yeah, I'll second.
Okay.
That's good.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, you're all set. Thank you very much for coming down and coming by tonight.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it.
Have a good
Thank
Thanks,
evening.
Marjorie.
Thank you.
So next up, you've got 14 Zach Hill.
Yeah.
And Dave Sacco is here. And I'm just sharing the screen with him so he can present for you. So just to give you a little bit of background on this one real quick, this is where you had a previous application that was submitted. There was work that we caught that was being done between the lot in front of this, which is 12 Zach Hill and 14 Zach Hill. So you had a permit that was submitted that you issued for septic work that was done for the lots. But that's all the work that had been done relative to the site development of this property. So the septic system's already in, and now this is the actual development of the house and its accoutrements.
Chris, is this the one where we released the bond recently, or was that the other
Yes,
piece?
that was the bond that you released relative to the septic system. Yep.
Feel free to proceed.
Okay, thank you. My name is David Sacco. I'm a civil engineer with TPA Design Group at 85 Willow Street in New Haven. I'm here this evening representing Julia Rooney and David Alborn, who are proposing to build a home on the lot at 14 Zach Hill Road. As Chris Sullivan just mentioned, this was before you back in 2012. At that time, the commission granted permission to install a septic system after extensive investigations with Quinnipiac Valley Health District. The septic system had to be built partially within the regulated area. You can see this is the installed location of the septic system relative to the 100-foot setback. Because the site is extensively underlain by ledge at fairly shallow depth, and there just weren't many suitable locations. At that time, there was also minor grading and access in order to accomplish the installation of the septic system. And last year, the site was purchased, and we're now here tonight with an application regarding the construction of the single-family residence that's shown in this plan. I'm going to just back up to the plan here. The wetlands are predominantly off of the site to the north. This is the wetland flagging. It was recently reflagged since there had been a long lag since the previous flagging, and this in resurvey. There's also wetland on the southerly portion of the site. The 100-foot regulated area is depicted relative to both of the wetlands. So the lot is 3.99 acres in area. We're looking at a total disturbance for the entire lot of roughly 0.9 acres, including roughly a quarter of an acre that was previously disturbed relative to the access, establishing access, clearing, and installing the septic system. Now, what we are looking at is a disturbed area within the regulated area of roughly a quarter of an acre. What we're proposing to do within the regulated area, some areas that had been cleared back in 2012 have become overgrown. There's evidence of invasive species such as autumn olive or knotweed, tree of heaven. So in some areas, what we're proposing to do is to try and rehabilitate vegetation without significant disturbance, without clearing, but simply selective removal of invasive species and introduction of appropriate materials. The major activity aside from that that's going to occur in the regulated area is going to be construction of the permanent driveway within the right-of-way. The house itself is beyond the 100-foot regulated area, as is the driveway apron area, the carport. We are also creating some water quality swales, some of which are within the 100-foot area. We're trying to locate the swales relative to areas where there is runoff tributary or in the general direction of the wetlands, so that we can retain, infiltrate, and mitigate any impacts that way. There's a series of small basins along the driveway below the garage and driveway areas, and then down in the southeast of the proposed house to handle the runoff from the house roof itself. In terms of total impacts, again, we're looking at roughly a quarter of an acre in total. We have indicated erosion control measures on the plans along the perimeter of the areas to be disturbed, stockpile areas. There will be the only structured drainage per se is going to be roof runoff that will be piped to the infiltration basins, along with a channel drain located across the front of the carport that's going to be routed to one of those basins as well. Let me just go down one more. In terms of landscaping, again, these areas that have been growing back in essentially for a decade, what we're looking to do is to remove invasive species and then reseed with an appropriate seed mix that, typical wildflower grass mix, to reestablish more beneficial plants in the buffer area. We do have some plantings, wet tolerant plantings within the basins themselves. The area over the septic system, we are going to be removing any small trees within the septic system footprint and for about 10 feet around it, just to ensure the long-term viability of the system itself, that we don't have any damage to it from root penetration, since it has not been in service since it was completed in 2013. Just in terms of the stormwater, what we did to size the basins is we're looking at the 2-year runoff from the area that is being rendered impervious as a result of the site development, and a short letter report describing that was included in the submission package.
Excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt you. What sheet are you looking at? None of my sheets look like the one you're showing us on your screen.
This is drawing number 4. It's the landscape plan.
I got drawing number 4. It's called private landscape plan. All right, yours is shaded. Yours just does not look like mine.
It may look different simply because this is a PDF and I'm not zoomed in very much, but it should be the same information. And that's really the extent of the proposed development. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Echo, if I remember right, correct me if I'm wrong, the driveway basically down to the street is already in basically. It's not paved or anything like that, but it's the access to get to the property and it's currently in there, right?
Yes, it is. If I go to the grading plan, you'll see that pretty much all we're doing is just we'll be stripping out the topsoil on the lawn and paving it. It's going to be a chip seal surface, but no, we're not really regrading it as such because it is graded already to an appropriate slope to manage traffic, manage vehicle access.
And is that the most significant activity within the upland review area?
Yes, it is. That's well, that and you know the associated water quality basins that we're creating along the driveway to manage the driveway runoff. That's really the extent of earthwork that we're proposing to be doing within the regulated area. And this line right here, this is the regulated area. So mainly we're talking about this piece of driveway and then the series of basins along it.
Those basins, do they just drain by runoff or is there some kind of structure in there? I can't tell from what I'm looking at.
No, they'll just overflow. They're designed to handle roughly 2 inches of runoff, and then what is in them will percolate slowly into the ground. If in the event of an extremely severe event, it would overflow and run toward the wetland. You know, given that they're as much as 75 or 80, 90 feet away from the wetlands, any excess runoff is going to be remediated by running through what's already a heavily vegetated area.
Steven Sosensky. Yeah, I'd like to say, I think the plan is well thought out. I like the way you have tried to treat that first flush off the driveway in these vegetated swales. Looks like the swale vegetation is well thought out. My preliminary thoughts.
Mr. Chairman, if you're comfortable, this is something that could be delegated to me.
I have one question first, if I may.
Go ahead, Jack.
I think it's there's one drawing, I think it's page 2 in the package that I have. It's got a bunch of X's where trees are going to be removed. But I can't tell. I think that's pretty much where the house is going. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. This is essentially the footprint of the house and the driveway areas immediately in front of the house. Okay. The 100-foot line is up here. Beyond that, we did a very extensive tree by tree identification and survey in order to facilitate the design process, because the owner and architect are attempting to retain as much of the natural vegetation, the look and feel of the site. The house is designed to exist on several levels so that it sort of steps up and down with the steep hilly terrain and fit into the site as gracefully as possible. And to acknowledge the fact that it's a rocky site. It's not a site that's amenable to flattening it out and building a ranch on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's a whole nother topic about flattening it out.
Yeah, we don't want that. I have no issue with delegating this to Chris.
Neither do I.
Neither do I.
I think this is appropriate to delegate.
Yeah.
As Stephen mentioned, it's a fairly well thought out plan. So. Plus,
Yep.
we've been to this site. We've been to this site so many times over the last decade. So, anyway, thank you for coming up with something that's appropriate.
Absolutely.
Do we have a motion to delegate this to Chris?
I'll make the motion. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll make the motion to delegate this to Ms. Sullivan.
And I'll
Yeah,
second.
second.
This is Jack.
Seconded. Okay. All in
Wait.
favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Abstentions? Okay. Thank you. You're all set. Thanks for coming in and putting up with all the other all the rest of the meeting we had. So,
No trouble. Thanks very much.
have a good night. Okay, now that I found my agenda again. All right, moving right along. We're now into old business. That's the hearing which has been continued. Oh, in the back. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is 283 Seymour Road, which is a solar tracking. We had a site visit on Monday night. I think the consensus was that the plan as proposed is fine, but we told the applicant that he didn't need to come this evening because the discussion at the site visit was that people seemed to be fairly amenable to the proposal. So, and didn't want to have him hang out for a couple hours here. So I don't know. Do we have a motion to approve the application for that?
Oh, wait a minute. Before we get to that, could I have just a discussion item to disclose?
Sure.
Yep. Just with respect to the application, looks like there's little to concern ourselves with, I suppose, except I did see structures right along the riverbank, at the top of the riverbank to Bladen's Brook. There were two garages or two sheds and a patio with a picnic table on it. And I guess with respect to that, I would just like to ask that the homeowner be instructed not to store any gas, chemicals, or anything else in those structures that have no containment whatsoever, and anything that falls on the floor in there is likely to just flow the other foot or two toward downslope, down gradient into the brook. So to whatever extent we can minimize the risk that we have an emergency or a unauthorized spill in those structures that probably are misplaced within that upland review area. If we could ask the homeowner to be conscious of the fact that nothing should be stored in those areas that presents a hazard to the regulated area.
Sure, we can mention that to them. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Okay.
But that's not part of this application or
no, but
impact on it, right?
No, but we did see, I don't know that those structures that are placed there are permitted or not. So, just in consideration of the fact that they may have been there for a while, and if just to show some deference to the homeowner under the circumstances, I think it might
those structures were there when he moved in.
Say that again, Josh?
I say those structures were there when he moved in.
Yeah, so that's what I don't intend to come down heavy in any way, but just it's a fact, and I don't know if they are permitted, but they represent a risk to the natural resource there, to the extent that there's gasoline, used oil, antifreeze, paint cans. Who knows what one might store in a shed right at the edge of a slope leading down to the river. So
the structures antedate us, and so they're allowed as of right, even if they didn't have a permit.
Okay.
Right.
Fine.
Okay, as far as this application is concerned, though, do we have any other comments on the solar tracking part of it? I mean, he seemed like a fairly responsible type guy, and I don't really see any impact to the wetlands, or negative impact to the wetland area there. So.
It's not gonna do anything to the way the water runs off the line that's already there.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I think he was going to improve the situation there by addressing some of the invasive species and undertaking
Absolutely.
maintaining eradication.
Right. So do we have a motion to approve the application?
Also move. Motion to
And
approve.
with usual stipulations, Chris. And do we have a second? Josh, did you second? Yeah.
I did.
Sorry, I was talking over your seconding. Sorry about that.
I don't feel badly.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions. All right, so that's all set.
And I assume that when that's issued, it's going to reference to the soil scientist report about the removal of the invasive species and whatnot.
Yeah, we should do that. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Please. Thank you for catching that. Moving right along. Any correspondence or any enforcement issues, Chris, that we need to talk about?
Not for wetlands, no. I've been busy with my other crew.
You don't need to know about that. So, so as far as site visits go, as we mentioned during the public hearing, we'll do Merritt Avenue next Wednesday evening, 6 or so. Again, it's in the context of a public hearing, so we're not supposed to have discussion outside the public hearing about the issues. And as far as minutes go, I didn't see any.
Didn't give you all of them because I was running out of room in the packet. Do you want to act on them tonight, or do you want to defer it to another meeting? Up to you.
Well, I think we'll have more time next week.
Okay.
Because
I'll
even
just
if
put
we
them
don't
on that agenda. Yep.
Yeah, even if we don't have much of a public hearing, if they're not ready to proceed, at least we can get rid of some of that housekeeping stuff. So
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just continue it to that regular meeting then.
well, anything. Well, we have. This is really a spec. Just for everyone's understanding on this. What I messed up last month when I thought that our meeting was going to be the third Wednesday of the month, but we had changed it to the fourth Wednesday of the month when we posted the annual schedule. That's why we had to treat this one as a special meeting, and sort of still keep other things on track. So I apologize, but next week we have our regular meeting, and we'll see how much is left on the agenda for that. So I think that's about it as far as what we can talk about anyway. So it's
Bob, just
9:30.
just one thought. Just one thought on that Merritt site inspection is there's the property is heavily prickered. So if I would advise you, if you have a nice ski jacket that's made of nylon or Gore-Tex, you might want to leave that at home because it will get snagged. So boots and something you don't want snagged because, as I said, there's lots of prickers to get to the wetland area.
All right, so it's 9:36. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Anybody?
So moved.
Stephen? Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Yeah.
All right, Jack, thanks. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? Okay, we're done. Thank you, everybody.